about 5 years or so, from the age of about 18 to about 23, I went through a period of time of doing all the drugs I could do. I wanted to try all the drugs in the world and was drinking heavily and all that stuff. I just had no regard for the potential damage or problems that this may cause. It's just something I had to do. And I met this guy. I was working at a sales job in a call center when I was about 21 at the time. And I met this guy there and found out that he also did ecstasy and would go to raves and listen to dance music and stuff like that. So we connected really quickly. And we ended up becoming pretty close friends, actually very close friends for, I don't know how long exactly, is maybe a year or so, the whole thing. But we connected on a very deep level. We were very similar in many ways. We always used to talk about, we'd always try to identify or I guess analyze everything. Like, we'd be very analytical, we'd try to understand people, and we were very sort of sensitive and emotional people who like to really discuss things at a deeper level, and it just really connected us. And what was interesting is that our drug use, like, he was the only other person that I used to hang around who would do drugs with that just seemed to be so out of control with it in terms of there would just be a never-ending want for it, a never-ending thirst just for more, for more, for more. Most people would stop, you know. But him and I we would just keep going until all resources, money was just gone, and then we'd have to stop. We'd finally go to sleep and sleep it off and yeah. But I find these parallels interesting between our similar personalities and that similar, that personality quality of a thirst for more, wanting to figure everything out, wanting to understand everyone and their intentions, and that unsatiable urge to do drugs more and more and more, the more monster we used to call it. But yeah, we had a really strong connection, and what's interesting is I came to this park because consciously, because it was it's beautiful, and I wanted to sort of make the videos here. I'm in Roma Street, Parklands, in Brisbane, where I live. But what I'm realizing now, I just realized it consciously, is that you can probably see the up there. Hopefully you can see it. Yeah, that building there, about 4 stories from the top in that center thing. That was actually where a lot of this happened, and I'm just realizing that now. Maybe it was some subconscious thing that brought me here. But yeah, that's the unit I used to live in with my girlfriend at the time, and me and that friend of mine. This is where a lot of those experiences happen, the heavy drug use and everything like that. So that's really interesting. And him and I had a couple of falling outs. There was a few. It's sort of the nature of drugs and two kind of sensitive people that would happen, but nothing major. But there was this one really, we eventually, we had a couple of falling outs. We apologized to each other and it was fine. But there was this one thing that happened that was so unusual and disrespectful that it was very concerning, right? It makes me think that his mental health was perhaps a lot poorer than I thought. But I hung out. I had another girl. This was a different girlfriend to the one that I lived up here with. This was years later. This was maybe when I was a lot older, actually, 28-ish. I'd quit drinking and quit drugs at that time. And we hung out, and he hung out with me and my girlfriend and him. And actually, no, I remember now, because I had this big work party thing, and he brought me some Valium so I could deal with the party. And we both took it, and it was very, very strong. And yeah, we had a good time. But after it, my girlfriend was there because she was a client of the gym we were dating, and we all went out. We were just hanging out. We all went to a club together. It was nothing crazy. We were just sitting on the couches talking, and they didn't notice anything weird between him and her. It was just normal, as far as I could see. And then I find out that he, I think a few days later, went, because she must have mentioned where she worked during the night. He went to her workplace and asked her to hang out. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, with Ben, yeah, we can all hang out. And he was like, no, just you and me. And this was so disrespectful. It's like intentionally going behind my back directly to my girlfriend, asking her to hang out one-on-one. She, of course, said no. But it's just so, yeah, just lacks so much respect. And it's such a sort of a pathetic, desperate thing to do that it just makes me look back and realize that there were some indications there of quite poor mental health. I mean, me too, I'm not saying it was perfect, but just speaking in regards to that kind of behavior. And so that was it for us. Like I never saw him again, but I remember messaging him on Facebook, threatening him, saying if we ever see each other, pretty much just like passively threaten violence towards him. Because I was fuming, as you are, that level of disrespect is unacceptable. But yeah, I thought I'd share that because it's sort of, maybe perhaps I could be making an incorrect association, but it seems to me that's an indication of maybe what's about to come, which I'll talk about soon. So years later, many years later, I think 10 years or so, I worked in the city at the same job that I currently work at, and I was just walking from my office to the gym in the city, and I saw a guy just sitting on a seat, and I didn't really think much of it, and the guy said something to me, and then I looked up and realized that the reason I didn't immediately recognize who it was because it's him. But he was dirty, right? Clothes were dirty. He had long hair. I think he had a bit of a beard, and his face was dirty. And I was like, instantly, I think I just realized, holy shit, man, what's going on? And I can't remember exactly the conversation in terms of like what was said, but he told me he was homeless, and I just kept saying, what the hell, man? I couldn't believe it. I was very resistant to the idea of being homeless, and it completely just instantly scared the shit out of me. It's a bird there. We call them bin chickens here because they feed off the bins. But anyway, I was instantly just scared, and I didn't know what to say, and I was just sort of asking him, And he was very wired at the same time, and he told me that he got the what's it called, that ADHD medication from a doctor. He must have told him he had ADHD, Ritalin, or whatever it was. And it makes sense because we used to do a lot of meth when we were together. That was our sort of, that and ecstasy. Sorry, I was just bombarded with a bunch of people smoking, and the security came and told them not to take photos of the lizards so close because they're wild animals and attacked, and it's disgusting smoking, so I had to get away. But yeah, so he was wired, and I found that interesting that he was taking drugs. but he denied. He said he doesn't drink anymore or take any other drugs. And I didn't exactly believe him. He did mention, I was talking to him about homelessness, and I was like, man, why? Why are you homeless? Like, it was completely shocking to me. And he said that it was just difficult for the first few months. Really difficult. But then he said he just got used to it, and it's, nothing. Well, not nothing, but I can't remember the words he exactly used, but he just said, I just got used to it. And I said, don't you get bored? And he's like, you just get bored of being bored. And he mentioned that he was going to, with his pay, he was going to buy some video game thing, one of the handheld ones. So he's getting it. It's part of, I guess, because Australia will give you, maybe he gets disability or, job seeker when you don't have a job, and that's possible here. You can live homeless. And then I started to realize that it's kind of a lifestyle choice for him to some extent, because he saves a lot of money. If you can get used to being homeless, you then have hundreds of dollars extra a week that you save on rent and utilities that you can then use to buy drugs and whatever else you want to buy. So, it makes me think that a lot of homelessness is a lifestyle choice, or, to say it's a choice is probably not the greatest wording. But he did mention a few things that sort of made me concerned for his mental health. Like, he tried really hard with me, and he was essentially the same person. We were connecting on the usual levels that we would, but he turned to the trees and mentioned something about people talking in the trees, talking to him. And I don't remember saying anything because he said it quietly, and I kind of didn't hear the whole thing, but I was like, that's really strange. And then he would tell stories about, he told a story about being kicked out of somewhere by a security guard, and he, blamed the security guard for it. And the common theme was that he just doesn't seem to take responsibility for anything that happens. And I think he mentioned that he got kicked out of one of those homes that people stay in. I can't remember what they're called, but the homes that they, like men's homes and stuff like that, just cheaper accommodation for men. And again, I don't believe he took responsibility for it. He, mentioned a bunch of stuff about them that it was their fault. And, I was thinking that something going on with him, I thought this stuff later on, but there's something going on with him where, his mental health is poorer than he's making out, and it's just causing problems being able to get along with people and live with people and everything. But that first experience, seeing him, was so intense for me. I was completely shocked, and I didn't know what to feel. It was shocking. I was like, man, it's homeless now. I didn't really form any conclusions or anything. I remained quite open to the experience. I didn't judge him. I was very careful with what I said. I listened to him. I did offer if he needed anything. He said no. And I think we spoke for about 30 minutes or an hour, and then I shook his hand and left. And I think I asked for his contact details, but he didn't have a phone. He doesn't have social media. But yeah, that was my first encounter with him. There were a series of others which I'll talk about, but my emotional response to that first encounter was afterwards. The aftermath of it was really powerful. So the effect, like I said before, the effect this had on me was incredibly intense, to say the least. I didn't really understand why until I sort of, over the months following the initial meeting with him, and other ones that I'll later talk about, I just remember that afternoon just being in this sort of state of confusion and shock, in a sense. I remember being in the supermarket here buying food and just thinking, man, he's outside, he's living in the elements, and how would someone think that that's okay? And when I was with him, I remember realizing for what he's saying that he's okay with it, that it's actually not wrong, that it's something you may be able to get used to, and that it's not as bad as I think, and that's sort of the impression that he gave me. And it really just made me question the way I see reality, that, you know, you see reality as homelessness as always being bad and a horrible thing, but like I said before, a lot of it can be a lifestyle choice, and they're choosing it, and maybe it's not as bad as we think. Who knows? And it really just messed me up. I remember just getting quite teary multiple times, just thinking about how could someone let their life get to that point. But then at the same time, I was sort of grappling with this concept of this new reality worldview, which is he's okay with it, he's choosing it. He could probably, you know, stop it if he wanted, but he just got used to it, and it's okay, it's not as bad as we think. But then the other side of it is that he did say that you know, he mentioned it a few times, I believe, or in a couple of instances that I saw him, of the difficulties he had trying to live with other people. So in some way, him expressing to me that it's okay for him, maybe it's not really a choice. He just is suffering from mental health to the point that it's making it impossible for him to be around people and to live comfortably with people. And I definitely can relate to that. I've had some of those issues myself. But in his case, he chooses homelessness, and then he tries to justify it to me, saying it's fine for him, which it might be. I don't know if that's true or not. It's a very difficult concept for me to grasp. But then, much later on, I just kept thinking about it, and I realized that he's just an insight into who I could have become had I made just a couple of different choices, the way my life would have ended up. And it's very scary because I quit drinking when I was 23, quit drinking alcohol and never went back. I got very close a couple of times. I did other drugs and things. I was never heavily addicted to anything, other drugs and stuff caused me some problems, but the fundamental decision that I made was to never drink alcohol again, and I never did. And I think that may have been the saving grace for me, as well as the ketogenic diet, because when I eat carbs, my mental health just gets so unbearably poor, in many ways, you know. So I think making those two decisions, just never being scared of trying new and scary things, which is not drinking, which is different diets, which is fasting, ketosis, carnivore, it prevented me from ending up there. But had I not made those choices, he is just an insight into who I would have become. And I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. I'm just saying it's an insight into where drug use and mental health issues can lead you, which is that situation that he's in, which clearly it's not a favorable situation. You want to be able to live with people, or you want to be able to live on your own in an apartment or house, whatever. But he can't, because for whatever reasons. But this is not something everyone gets. People don't get to see. It's like the what's that Christmas movie with the one that Disney did with Scrooge McDuck, and he sees his Christmas past and future and all that stuff. I can't think of the name right now. A bit foggy today. But it's like that. I got to see what my future would have been had I made different choices to what I did, and it just completely floored me in every way. Even now I think about it less, because I've had the realizations, you know, and accepted it to some degree. But for those months after it was just completely a life-changing experience, really. I've seen him since many times. We planned to meet up. After the first time I saw him, I believe we planned to meet up unless I saw him again and planned. I can't remember exactly, but we did meet up. I was going through a lot at the time. It was a very difficult time with a very difficult relationship that I was having a few years ago now. And yeah, just thinking about how crazy it is, how many years he's been homeless, because this all happened a few years ago now, and he's been 3-4 years, maybe more, that he's been out there. It's really crazy to think that. But yeah, I did meet up with him, and yeah, we talked. I wasn't in the best place to kind of be there for him in a sense. I was more dealing with my own stuff, but we talked about it, and he was good about it. He did bring up a few things that he'd been going through with accommodation, and he mentioned that again something he mentioned about that his parents were going to buy him a van to live in. And after he was saying that later on, I realized that it's again him not taking responsibility, right? Expecting other people to bail him out of his situation. And I think, again, adding on to the other decisions that I made in terms of, deciding to heal, to always focus on healing and always stop doing things that are not good for me. Trying to, right? With keto and with not drinking and trying not to do any drugs at all. Along with that is that I remember when I was about probably a teenager, a bit later, I didn't take responsibility. I blamed everyone, and I think everyone goes through that stage. But then I started to look into it and get into self-help and meditation and spirituality, and you start to realize that, oh, okay, it's an act of weakness to blame someone else for your own choices and feelings and experiences. So then I started to really try to take responsibility for everything. And I fail, of course. As humans, we naturally look external and we blame other people for the way we feel, etc. But I try my best to do this, and for me, I take it as far as I can, and the distance I like to take this ability to take responsibility is that I am responsible for everything in the universe. I'm responsible for war. I'm responsible for all the suffering. I'm responsible for other people's behavior. I'm responsible for my own behavior. And you could think that that's unhealthy. Of course, blaming yourself for other people's behavior on a very practical level is not healthy. But what I find is that if I come from a place of taking responsibility on the ultimate level, I'm more in a position to see my mistakes and errors. For example, if I'm responsible for all the wars in the world, where am I believing my thoughts? Where am I believing the stories and the feelings in my body that may be incorrect? And this is the cause of war, right? Religion and belief and selfishness and ignorance. Where in my life am I creating war? Where am I making these errors that creates war in the first place? What errors have I made to invite someone into my life that would disrespect me? What choices have I made to put myself in a position to have the difficulties that I'm facing? What errors, what did I not understand about myself? What did I, what did I misunderstand? What did I overlook? And this is something that I've, for 20 years now, tried to do at my best. I fail constantly, but I think this is also another difference in why I didn't end up there, because I kind of grew out of that somewhat young, maybe younger than a lot, just because of my constant interest in developing myself and fixing the problems. And you can see by talking to this friend of mine that he just doesn't. Everything's someone else's fault, and it's very sad to see. There's more to it, of course. Like I know what it's like to go through mental health struggles, and it is absolutely terrifying. It's isolating. It's lonely. It's confusing. It's awful because you try your best. We all try our best. He's trying his best, and his blaming of other people is way of not taking responsibility, of not having to face the suffering in its fullest that he would have to face, that he goes through on a daily basis. So I don't blame people for what they do, you know, because I do understand mental health and where it can lead you and how awful it is. But I do understand the differences and why I didn't end up where he is. And it was a very important lesson for me. And it's not about I'm better than him or anything. It's just about the difference. I don't want to be homeless, and I'm sure he doesn't either, even though he's gotten used to it. It doesn't mean he wants that. Of course, he would choose a soft bed, you know, because he sleeps in the park that I made my last video, about the last one I made in that park. I can't remember what it was about, but that was the park he lives in generally. I have seen him passed out in this park, not this in it, but out the front. He'd been drinking. I didn't do anything. I don't feel good about that. I have seen him around many times, and I've actually ignored him, not talked to him, because I mean, there are times where I've just been busy, but there are times where I made that choice out of not wanting to face my own discomfort about the situation. And I see him walking around sometimes, and I've looked into his eyes before when he was passing me, and I said, "Hey, Luke," or I must have waved or said something, and he looked straight at me, and it was just, each time I see him, his eyes are just different. And that time I remember he was more gone. He looked very upset, you know, very not there. Whether it's the drugs or it's the whatever it is, because I'm pretty careful with things, but I still seem to struggle a lot. Mental health, it seems to be getting worse as I get older. So whether it's the food supply, whether it's the antibiotics we all took, whether it's the drugs him and I took when we were younger, whether it's that he's homeless and he's taking drugs and he's not looking after himself, who knows what it is, but it's not getting better. And each time I see him, it seems a little worse. He's seems a little less connected to reality, a little less able. I remember once I did see him and I stopped and talked to him, and he was very anxious, like super. He didn't look like he was on drugs. He just looked like something was wrong, like his body was vibrating, and maybe schizophrenia is there, who knows, I don't know. But each time that I see him and I don't say anything, I feel really bad about it. You need to at least recognize another human being that I've shared so much with. And it was interesting because obviously he did something that was unforgivable, that he did with that ex-girlfriend of mine. But as soon as I saw him, it's not like I forgave him. It's not like I trust him. I don't trust him at all. But it's just that instantly those barriers that caused me to hate the guy were gone, because I felt so much about it, you know, and that was an interesting experience. I sometimes think about, what should I do? Should I let him live in my house? Should I give him something? I offer things to him when I see him. I ask if he needs anything, but he always says no every time. He probably has more money than me, honestly, without having to pay rent. My rent is exorbitant. But yeah, each time I see him, it's worse, you know, and it scares me. So one of the big things I learned from this is that we're all the same. Like, we're really all the same. The thing that ties us together is our suffering. Rather than keep us apart, it can keep us together. We can see that homeless people are just a slight exaggeration of the problems that we have. Not necessarily homeless, but people with mental disabilities and you know, problems like my friend I described. Because I experience all the same, it seems to be similar things to him, like with a lot of emotional stuff, social stuff, pretty painful stuff, and him as well. And even though he went a little further with it, it seems a little worse in some ways. I still feel what he has inside me. It's the same thing with my mother. My mother was quite mentally ill, I believe, for many reasons, and I feel what she had that affected me so negatively, I feel it inside me, and I feel it affecting me. So even and I really disliked the woman for a lot of my life until pretty much a few years before she died, and after she died was when I started to forgive her. Unfortunately, I was never able to actually see her again or find her, even though I did try. But even the people that we hate the most, what they have is inside all of us. It's the same, like I was walking lately, so I used to get really triggered and annoyed by people who are kind of rude, you know, people in public in the shopping center and stuff, but lately it hasn't been getting to me as much. I don't think I tried to do anything to see it differently. It just started to happen where I just started to see that I sometimes feel like they feel. I sometimes don't feel like I'm stuck in my head and I feel like shit and I didn't sleep well, and my brain for no reason is causing me to feel completely disconnected from everyone and depressed and anxious and worried about everything. And other people feel like that too, so when they treat me poorly, it's just an expression of how they are and how they feel. I imagine that their inner child is just interacting with my inner child. We're all just children interacting with each other, and if children are in a bad mood, we don't take it personally. If children are kind of rude, we teach them, but we don't take it personally. But if adults are rude, we kind of can take it personally. But I just see someone who is stuck in their head and dealing with their health worries and financial worries and mental health worries and family and relationships. They're lonely, confused, scared. I just see that, and I see that I am the same. And that it's not about me, it's just we're all fighting the same battle. Sometimes people appear in a much different way to us, that someone who can be homeless, someone who can live outside in the bush, you know, without any bedding and in the elements, sleeping in front of people. Even though that seems a lot different to me and my lifestyle and what I can handle, it really isn't. He's really not that different. He's the same person. He just, his mental health stuff was just a little more exaggerated than me. He made slightly different choices in a couple of different ways, and he ends up being in the position that he's in. So we're all just a couple of different choices and circumstances away from being that homeless person with mental health issues. We're really not that different from each other, and this is something that I learned specifically from that experience of seeing that friend, and it has changed me in a fair few ways, but it took a long time. It took actually a period of years for me to really understand and reflect and really internalize a lot of this information. Got a train. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a message if you have any questions, have anything you want to add, you have any tips, ideas, anything at all. All the best. Cheers.